I want to talk about Roman culture and Roman religion, not just because it's interesting as a context for first century Christianity, but I think it has some things to tell us about today. So at one point in the book, you compare the way the Romans understood their connection to their deities. You use the metaphor of the Mafia.
Right.
I love that. Unpack. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, well, we first have to start with where many of us are today so that we understand just how different religion was in the ancient world. Today in a secularized post-Christian society, religion is like a marketplace, right? So you're like, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try a little bit of this, sprinkle some of this in my, and it's ultimately about fulfillment. We're looking for fulfillment. And it's like, oh, if I get a chance to do some meditation, okay, but if not, I won't. Whereas in the ancient world, it was obligatory, it was national, and it was about survival. So ultimately, religion was the way we think of colonization, right? If a colonizer comes to your nation and takes over, you're not in a marketplace shopping sort of situation where you say, we're still deciding who's going to be our sovereign, right? You're just being taken over. And your whole goal is to keep the people in charge happy, right? And so think about the British Empire, think about, slavery, things like that. Think about a slave-master relationship. You're not saying, I'm going to choose my master. So in the Roman world, society was organized according to a kind of pyramid of power, right? With the fewest and the most powerful at the top, and then the highest population at the bottom. And we tend to have this really strong bifurcation between heaven and earth, or spiritual things, or earthly things. But it was kind of one pyramid in the Roman world. So at the very top, you had the high Olympians, Jupiter and Neptune and all of that, right? Mars, the great, Olympian deities that we might think of like Zeus. Below that, you have demigods and, particular people that have been deified and made into gods. And then just kind of on the cusp, on the line between heaven and earth, the celestial place and the immortal place, you have the emperor who's he was actually referred to as the Pontifex Maximus, the great bridge builder, because he's building a bridge between heaven and earth. We get our Pope language from Pontifex Maximus, that Caesar emperor, the great bridge builder. So then you had Caesar, right, who's kind of high level in this pyramid. And then you have the senatorial class, the equestrian class of humans. And then you have the great mass of commoners towards the bottom. And the very bottom, you had slaves, criminals, the disabled, and foreigners and immigrants. And so if you're at the bottom, you looked up and you wanted to just keep the people up there from stomping on you. Yeah, actually, I was just watching the movie Avengers, the first Avengers movie with my kids. Surprisingly, it was their first time watching it. I'd seen it like 100 times. And there's a scene where Loki originally appears and he offers salvation to the people. And Nick Fury's like, what are you saving us from? He's like, I'm saving you from freedom. Freedom is the great myth, right? Yeah. This idea that, and he's like, we're no threat, you're no threat to us. He's like, an ant is no threat to a boot. He's like, you're going to stomp on us? This is exactly, for everything we love from a media standpoint, Gladiator, Star Wars, Hunger Games, it's all playing on the Roman Empire, right? All this stuff is Roman Empire. Because the Roman Empire basically perfected what's called stratified power, this idea that there are these echelons of society in a pyramid. And your goal was, if you're anywhere at the bottom or even in the middle, keep the people above you happy, keep them at a distance, try to get in their good favor, and hope and pray for just a little bit of goodwill from them. That was politics, but that was also religion.
Because part of the understanding was anybody in the pyramid above you had sovereign power over you. They could do anything they wanted. You didn't have rights that you could appeal to necessarily and say, well, you can't do that to me even though I'm below you. They can do whatever they want. That even led to some of the sexual ethics in the ancient world, where it didn't matter. If I was in the pyramid above you, I could do whatever I wanted to anyone below. There was no criminal activity in that. So appeasement was a big part of it. So that brings us back to the mafia metaphor, which, other great movies, the Godfather movies, there's a sense of you give patronage to the mob bosses, and in exchange for that, they give you protection.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's kind of a fear-based system. It's not deep love. It's not devotion. It's not real commitment. It's fear. And so you want to appease the deities just so things can go well with you and avoid trouble. That was about it.
Absolutely. It was kind of also like, if you can't beat them, join them, right? If you try to resist the Roman culture, the Roman way, you're not going to make it anywhere, and you might end up in prison, or you might end up, living on the streets, panhandling. So you had every motivation to give into the system and to basically find your place. So there's a famous satire writer from the ancient world named Juvenal, and I refer to him as the Trevor Noah of the first century, because he did really funny but very clever political satire. And he talks about this patronage system of kissing up to the people in the echelon above you, but then those people treat you like dirt. So Juvenal says, hey, you decided to give into the system. He says, you're going to get invited to a dinner party. And you're so excited because you're going to be there with famous people. But guess what? They're going to serve you last. They're going to put you in a different room with, the losers. They're going to give you cold food. They're going to give you expired food. They're going to put you as far away from the entertainment as possible. It's so humiliating. Juvenal says you might as well live on the streets. You'll have a better life on the streets than living in that system. And yet that system was the only way for social mobility in the Roman world. And people would be crazy to deviate from that system.
It sounds like middle school.
It is. I might have said that.
I have a very good friend who we've known each other since we were children. Jay, you're listening to this. I know you're going to remember this. We talked about how there were a bunch of different elementary schools that fed into the same middle school. And when you showed up to middle school on the first day and went to the lunchroom, everyone had to pick a table. Yeah. And he came up with the hypothesis that your entire middle school and then high school existence was all hinging on what table you chose to sit at on the first day of 6th grade in middle school. Right. Jay chose a very good table. I did not. I chose a very poor table, but it was like you got just locked into that group, pegged into that strata, and then you just hoped that the people above you didn't pay any attention to you, ignored you, let you go by, and you didn't become the focus of ridicule and teasing and bullying and all that. But yeah, okay, it's bringing back traumatic memories.
Shuddering. This is all Rome, Scott. This is all Rome. You can blame Rome for all this.
So a Latin phrase that comes up frequently in your book is pax deorum. Yeah. Explain what that means and how the whole religious cultic structure of Rome fed into it.
Yeah, pax deorum is Latin for peace of the gods, or peaceful coexistence with the gods. So again, think of a colonial context, a colonized context, where, let's say in India, you have, the British Empire. You want to play nice, right? You want to keep these people happy, and you might even assimilate to some degree. You learn their language, right? You dress like them sometimes. You negotiate, all those kinds of things. And so what you want is peaceful coexistence. That means worshiping. That means sacrifice. That means visiting temples. That means conforming to that culture. And I'll tell you what, the Greco-Roman religious culture was one of violent domination. One of the most famous legends they had in Greco-Roman myth was called the Theogony, Hesiod's Theogony. And it was basically a contest of power between the gods. You had the Titans. My family and I just finished watching Percy Jackson, the Disney show. It is actually a good reflection of Greco-Roman religion. You have the Titans, and then you have the kind of Olympians, and you have Zeus going against Kronos and defeating him and subjugating him to Tartarus and all of that. And it's like, then Zeus is on the lookout, like, who's going to try to get me next?
It is the Mafia. It's the Godfather movies.
It's dangerous. And yeah. It is about survival of the fittest and the most powerful. And so you showcase violence, threats, domination in order to prove that you belong at the top. And this reflected in the realm of mortals, where Caesar emperor does this, right? Roman soldiers do this. It is reflected, and it's reflected at the lowest level of competitiveness in social clubs, in even in religious settings. So this idea of peaceful coexistence with the gods, it wasn't about peace in your heart. Roman religion didn't care about the heart. It didn't. In fact, several kind of famous philosophers said, and religion specialists said, who cares about what you feel, right? I'm doing taxes right now. And the IRS doesn't care how you feel about taxes. They don't say in the letter, like, let us know if it's in your heart to give money. They just want the money, right? So a heart religion was seen as crazy. This was called superstition in the Roman world. Pax Deorum didn't have to do with Billy Graham's understanding of peace with God. It had to do with placating the colonizing deities, placating the emperor, placating spirits and powers that could harm you.
Yeah, and your whole point about the will to power, to use a Nietzschean phrase, like the strength and domination of the gods and the warring of the gods with one another, which then gets reflected in society. Because they worshiped strength and power, along comes Paul or Peter or the apostles preaching a religion that worships a crucified Savior. Like it was madness. Why would you pick the lowest, most humiliated person in society and say, this is our God? It was bonkers.